This will be quick, but it probably won't be that quick. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Schiff. I'm also running for the United States Senate. But, I think this is a very important race here in Connecticut. Rob started us off with a pledge of allegiance, but, the republic for which it stands is not standing on firm footing right now. And I think it's, just electing a Republican to the United States Senate isn't going to cut it. We need more than just another Republican in Congress. There are plenty of Republican senators. They've been voting for bigger spending, more regulations, higher taxes for years. In many ways, it's hard to tell them from the Democrats. When they're out of power, they make a lot of noise. They oppose the deficit spending and the bailouts and the stimulus when Barack Obama was doing it. But when George Bush was doing it, you didn't hear a peep out of these guys. So the problem is that all the spending from Democrats and Republicans, unfortunately, has brought this country to the brink of, I think, financial ruin. Our leaders in Washington who assured us that the economy was in great shape, in 2007, just before we went off the edge of a cliff. These are the same people that are trying to tell us that everything is getting better as they dig us into a deeper hole. The economy is not recovering, not in the country, not in Connecticut. All that we're doing as a nation is going deeper into debt. We're expanding government with borrowed money. We're encouraging Americans to buy more stuff that they can't afford. The problem with our nation is because of monetary and fiscal policy, we have gone on a reckless spending binge. Individuals have, the government have. We're trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, and our factories have been, disintegrating beneath our feet. Our economy only exists because we borrow money from China, from Japan, from Saudi Arabia, and buy products that we didn't make and we can't afford. Meanwhile, the governments go on promising citizens more benefits to get reelected. The federal government does it. The state governments are doing it. We are completely broke. And all we've done is postpone the pain. The financial crisis that we had in 2008, that wasn't an accident. And it wasn't caused by the free market. It wasn't caused by Goldman Sachs. They might have done some bad things, but they didn't cause the problem. The problem was caused by the Federal Reserve. The problem was caused by Congress. And the reason that I was able to predict this, and I was out, in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, on television, writing books, warning about the financial collapse and what was going to happen. But the reason I was able to do that is because I understood the root causes. I knew what was wrong with the economy, and I knew what was the driving force behind those mistakes. And I knew how things were going to play out. And that same understanding of economics lets me know that everything that they've done, since the financial crisis began, starting with Bush and continuing with Obama, everything we've done has been wrong. Instead of allowing the free market to correct the imbalances that were built up over the years as a result of excess regulation and bad monetary policy, instead of doing that, we've actually compounded the problems. We're deeper in debt now by far than we were a year or two ago. The government is more involved in the economy. The government is more involved in the mortgage market, in the banking sector, in the automobile sector. The government has just grown gargantuan. It's not like, first the Fed blew up a stock market bubble. Then it blew up a housing bubble. Now it's inflating a government bubble. The government is spending close to $4 trillion a year right now, which is more than twice what it spent 10 years ago. We cannot survive with a government that size. It was bad enough, when it was half the size 10 years ago. It is impossible. The government is sucking all the life out of the economy. What I want to do is I want to go to Washington and put an end to that. Not in the future, but right now. We need someone to go to Washington to stop government spending dead in its tracks, which is exactly what I want to do. You have plenty of congressmen who, when they go back to their districts and they campaign, they say they're against deficit spending, right? They're for a balanced budget amendment. But you know what? Every time they go back home to Congress, they vote to increase the national debt ceiling. Never fails. I want to bring that to an end. I want deficit spending to stop with my election. I'm going to filibuster the next increase in the debt ceiling and try to find 40 other senators that will stand with me and put an end to it. And then we can reverse the course in Washington. Instead of figuring out which new government agencies we can create, how about which ones can we eliminate? Instead of new rules and new regulations to enact, let's figure out the ones that have done the most damage and repeal them, either to the financial industry or to healthcare or to education. And we got to cut government spending. We got to abolish entire agencies and departments. We can't afford the money that we're spending because the country is broke. The only real economic stimulus that will work is one that shrinks government. And we have to allow savings to be restored. You can't have economic growth without savings, because savings is where capital comes from. Businesses make investments that create products and provide jobs based on capital. And capital only comes into existence from underconsumption and savings. But we don't have that in this country. The government punishes savings. They punish it with 0% interest rates, and they punish it with taxes. Meanwhile, they encourage people to go out and borrow money and spend it. That just leads to disaster. We have to allow for real economic recovery. And I know, people talk about, who can win in this race. As I said, it's not just important about which Republican can win. It's who's going to make a difference if they do win. And I think I'm the only one that will. And I also think I happen to have the best chance of beating Dick Blumenthal. I think that this race is going to come down to, anti-incumbency, anti-Democrat, and Republican, because Republicans have not stood up for their principles. I'm the person who has criticized Republicans when they've done wrong. I was on CNN criticizing George Bush for the bailouts and for the stimulus and for all the spending bills that he signed year after year after year. He didn't veto anything. And it's going to have to be somebody who can, we got to throw the bums out and start fresh. We need a fresh perspective. We need a businessman. We need an entrepreneur. We need an economist. We don't need another politician, and we don't need another lawyer. And the person who can articulate that and win that campaign is me. I like Rob. He's a decent guy, but he's been in Washington. He was there for 6 years. I don't think he's going to win. I don't think if we put up a Republican politician versus a Democratic politician, I don't think we're going to win in the state of Connecticut. It's going to be too difficult. We need somebody from outside of Washington that can make that argument. Dick Blumenthal is going to be able to say, well, I'm an outsider, I'm not part of Washington. Yeah, but he's in Hartford. He's been in government for 20 years, and he was a lawyer before that. He was a prosecutor for the federal government. He's never worked in the private sector. He's never run a business. He has no idea how our free market economy works. He has nothing but disdain for it. All he wants to do is sue the people that create the jobs and that take the risks that grow the economy. He can't beat me in this race. He can't debate with me in this race. When we had that only Republican debate, both of my opponents spent the first 10 or 15 minutes writing notes so they would know what to say. I didn't write a single note because I didn't have any talking points. Nobody tells me what to say. I say what I feel, and I say what I believe. And he doesn't think on his feet. He's lousy when he's interviewed. I've seen the guy interviewed. He does a lousy job. And he did a terrible job in the debate that he had. As far as Linda McMahon, I think she's going to have a lot more money than me in this race. But you know what? If Linda McMahon's the nominee, the Democrats are going to have a lot more money. They're going to bring in the money from Hollywood. They're going to bring in the money from Wall Street. It's going to be a nuclear arms race. That's great if you're selling media in the state of Connecticut. But you know what? She's going to lose that advantage. I got a lot of money. I've got over 20,000 people, individual people, who have contributed to my campaign. I have 1/10 of 1% of my money has come from PACs. I don't think there's a single candidate in the country who has a smaller percentage of his money. All of my money has come from individuals. The only large donor was me who put money in. The rest has come in small increments from people all around the country, not just in Connecticut, but all around the country. And that money will keep coming in, especially if I get the nomination. So far, people have given me money just, as a token of goodwill, figuring I'm a long shot. But if I actually win, I'm sure a lot of people are going to open up their wallets, because there's a lot of people in this state, in this country, that care about the freedom, that care about the Constitution, and that believe in me, that believe that I'm actually going to Washington for the right reasons. The problem is we have all these problems, and politicians will never solve them, because they can't solve them and get reelected. All they care about is postponing the pain until after the next reelection. I don't care. I don't want to get reelected. I want 6 years to turn this country around. And no one is going to do the right thing if they're worried about getting reelected. If they want to blame me for the problems, if they want to put it all on me and make me the fall guy, that's fine. I don't care. But the country is more important than politics. And anyway, see, I know I'm running out of time here, so let me take as many questions as I can, because I know I got to leave in a few minutes. And also, if you want to get more information on my campaign, my website is schiffforsenate.com, and my headquarters are in Milford. Yeah.
So, I have a question for you. Now, over the weekend, European Economic Committee, together with the IMF, together with basically everybody, essentially assumed the retirement expenses of the Greeks and passed them on. We figure we get 17% of that to us. Now, you've got all these countries and everybody kicking their debt upstairs. And you're right, that's what I saw. Town kicks it up to the state, except Avon, we get it kicked down to us. But most towns kick it up to the state kicks it up to the federal government, that was a stimulus, and the federal government has nowhere to kick it. The IMF, basically that's it. If I'm correct, that's all their money that they essentially committed over this weekend. They're all in.
Yeah, well, it's not just, I mean, the bottom line, what Greece should have, I mean, what Europe should have done is not given a nickel to Greece and let Greece go bankrupt and let the creditors take a hit, right?
Okay, but they didn't. And so now what we as a nation have to decide is, what is the IMF really going to mean to us? Because if it's going to become, we start assuming the rest of the world's debts.
Well, we're a long way from that. Because remember, where are we going to get the money to give the IMF? We're going to borrow it from China. We're already okay. The problem is what Europe is doing. And I call this today on my blog, it's bailout American style. They're taking our lead, right? They're deciding that they're not going to let Greece or Spain or Portugal default, right? They're not going to let them default. What they're going to do instead is print euros. That's already what we're going to do. See, the problem with America is, we're saying we don't have to default because we have a printing press. Well, that printing press is worse. We owe trillions. The national debt is $13 trillion. But that doesn't count the $6 trillion that Freddie and Fannie owe. You know, it doesn't count a lot of other off-budget items. It doesn't count any of them. Those are the unfunded liabilities. You throw those in, that's another $50 trillion. We are flat broke. We're broker than Greece. The reason nobody is worried is because we can print money. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about people getting Social Security checks and not being able to buy anything because they're worthless. That's the road we're going down. You know, and we got all these little Greece. What's going to happen when California can't pay its bills, or the state of Connecticut? Is the federal government going to bail them out? There's all these municipalities. All the governments have promised more than we, the taxpayers, can deliver, and there isn't a single politician with the guts to tell the truth and tell government employees or beneficiaries of various entitlements that we don't have the money, that the taxpayers don't have the money. And they don't want to deliver the bad news, so they're going to print. And we're going to have runaway inflation, and prices are going to go through the roof for food, for energy, for clothing, and then there's going to be way more people unemployed. And even if you're lucky enough to have a job, it's not going to matter, because you're not going to be able to buy much with your paycheck. But all this is coming soon. And Europe, they're going to have a problem too, because what they just did was a big mistake for the euro.
It's like watching one of those movies where the asteroid's coming toward you.
Any other questions? We're doing this to ourselves. Yeah.
If you could slice 3 programs, 100% federal programs, which would they be, and how much?
Well, I'd slice a lot more than 3.
I'm asking you a top
I've
3,
given you,
and how much would each one?
Well, I know if we get rid of the Department of Energy, that's $30 billion a year, which is a complete waste of money. Doesn't produce a drop of oil. When we enacted it, it was to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. That was the only reason it's there. Since then, our dependence on foreign oil has doubled. So it's a lousy job. Department of Education has another $70 billion. When Ronald Reagan ran for president, those are the 2 departments he wanted to eliminate. Meanwhile, look where they are. Let's get rid of the Department of Education. It wastes $70 billion a year. And the main thing they do at the Department of Education is drive up the cost of education by subsidizing student loans. Let's get the government out of the subsidy business so colleges will reduce their tuitions so that our kids can actually afford to go there instead of taking on all this debt. Also, in the Department of Agriculture, we get rid of most of what the Department of Agriculture does is subsidize farmers not to grow food. The whole purpose of the Agriculture Department is so food is more expensive. And then we give food stamps through the department to poor people so they can afford to pay for food that would be a lot less expensive if they weren't subsidized. They do the same thing. The Department of Agriculture subsidizes tobacco companies, right? And then we run ads convincing people not to smoke the tobacco that we just subsidize to produce. The whole thing is nonsense. But there's all sorts of departments that we can abolish. Other departments can be consolidated. And we have to make cuts across the board, including to entitlements. Nobody is entitled to somebody else's money. That's the bottom line. People think they're entitled to it because they think they paid into it. Nobody paid into anything. It was a fraud. Every single dollar that the government collected in Social Security taxes has already been spent. There is nothing there. There is no money. So the only money the government gets to make current payments is the money it can take from people who are still working. It's a transfer from the working poor, in many cases, to the retired rich. We don't have the money. I feel bad for the fact that people made promises that we can't keep. I feel bad for the people that invested with Bernie Madoff and lost their money. But it's the same principle. It's the same Ponzi scheme. We have to put an end to it. We have to find real solutions to these problems. Because if we keep denying that they exist and keep on spending money, we're going to destroy the value of everybody's benefits. No one's going to get anything. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Next, Mark.